What's going on, guys? Welcome in. This is Kadarius Washington, and you are watching the Women's Basketball Rundown. Well, friends, the round of 64 in the NCAA Women's Tournament tips off today. Yes, 68 teams have been rounded out into 64, and now it is time to make a bracket on the women's side. Now, I made a bracket yesterday for the men's side on the sports rundown, and that thing is shriveled up into dust. So let's see what this women's bracket will do for me here as we get you going. All right, starting out in Region 1, we have the number 1 overall seed in UCLA looking to make their first Final Four appearance in program history, and they're taking on a Southern team with an incredible win on Wednesday evening. And I'm going to go ahead and pick UCLA to advance in that region. All right, and we're going to go region by region as far as the bracket is concerned. Next, we have the number 8 seed Richmond taking on number 9 Georgia Tech. I mean, Georgia Tech, if you ask me, has been kind of wonky this year. They've been coming into this thing with quite a few losses, getting swept against NC State in a few games there. And this is a Richmond team which, from what I saw, was pretty good. So, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and take Richmond in that one. All right, next matchup, we've got the 5-ranked Ole Miss taking on 12-ranked Ball State. I love what I've been seeing from Ole Miss recently, and I'm a huge fan of Coach Yo, so I'm going to go ahead and take Ole Miss in that matchup. Then we've got Baylor taking on Grand Canyon. Now, listen, I think Grand Canyon is a little bit of a dangerous team here as we go here as far as this game is concerned, but I kind of like Baylor in this matchup. I mean, they've been to quite a few of these things, obviously, so I kind of like Baylor as far as that game is concerned. And then we've got Florida State taking on George Mason, another team that I believe is dangerous in George Mason, but I love Florida State. I love Tania Latson. She should have been first team All-American if you ask me. But nevertheless, give me Florida State in that matchup. And then we've got LSU taking on San Diego State. I'm going to go ahead and pick LSU for that one. Then we've got Michigan State, the 7 seed, taking on Harvard, the 10. And folks, I'm going with the upset special here. Give me Harvard. Incredible story. Harmony Turner, the senior leader there, is an incredible player, and I have loved watching that Harvard team all season. They've been fun to watch. Next, I got the number 2 ranked NC State taking on 15 Vermont. I'm going to go ahead and pick NC State for that one. And so the round of 32 in that region, we would have number 1 ranked UCLA taking on Richmond, the 8 seed. I'm going to go ahead and pick UCLA for that one. And then we would have Ole Miss taking on Baylor. That's a kind of a picky game, if you ask me. But I really want to pick Ole Miss to win that one, and I'm going to go ahead and pick them. And then next, we've got Florida State against LSU. Another really good game, if you ask me. But I think LSU is the more talented team by as far as that situation is concerned. So I'm going to go ahead and pick LSU there. And then we've got Harvard taking on NC State. This is another situation where I love Harvard, but NC State is a much better team with Isaiah James and Triger and Brooks and everybody. So I'm going to go ahead and pick NC State in that matchup. Then we would have UCLA taking on Ole Miss. I think that would be a pretty fun game as far as the Sweet 16 in that region is concerned, but I'm going to go ahead and pick UCLA in that one. And then we've got LSU taking on NC State, which is going to be another fun, interesting game should we get that in the Sweet 16. I'm gonna... Oh my God, this is a hard game to pick here with LSU and NC State. Dang. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and pull for LSU in this one. I'm going to go ahead and take the Tigers, and then we would have UCLA taking on LSU, which would be an interesting matchup there in the region. And I'm going to go ahead and pick UCLA to go to the Final Four. All right, starting in Region 2, you've got the reigning champion South Carolina Gamecocks, who are the number 1 seed in that thing. Now, a lot of South Carolina people are angry because South Carolina didn't get the number 1 overall seed, and you may have a case for that. Now, I know I said a couple of weeks ago when I was previewing the matchup saying I don't know if I would have a problem if either UCLA or South Carolina got the number 1 overall seed, but looking at overall resume and if head-to-head matchups held as much water as they did, they probably would. I mean, you would think that South Carolina would have the 1 seed, but no, because of that head-to-head situation. Let's see, back in November, they gave it to UCLA instead. But nevertheless, South Carolina, number 1 seed in Region 2. They're taking on Tennessee Tech. Obviously, I'm picking South Carolina in that one. And then you've got the 8-9 matchup, Utah taking on Indiana. Now, Indiana's a little bit of a dangerous team here. So, and I've seen a lot of Utah, but the few games that I've seen of them, I was like, yeah, okay. But I'm going to go ahead and take the upset here. Give me Indiana to advance. And then we've got the number 5 ranked Alabama taking on Green Bay. I'm going to go ahead and pick Alabama for that one. And then here's a matchup where I'm really going to be interested in. The 4-13 matchup. Maryland taking on Norfolk State. And as you see, I got my Norfolk State Letterman jacket here because, we definitely root for 757 teams here on the women's basketball rundown. And that's going to be a very interesting game. It's been talked about a lot over this week. And you know what? Listen, Maryland, I mean, yeah, they're a pretty good team, but they've been dealing with some injuries. They've kind of been on and off all year. And I think Norfolk State may be probably the most dangerous mid-major team as far as this bracket is concerned. So you know what, folks? I'm going upset special. Give me the Spartans to advance to the round of 32. And then we've got West Virginia taking on Columbia, the 6-11 matchup. Columbia just with the win last night. I'm going to go ahead and take West Virginia. I really like this West Virginia team and J.J. Quinterly and that situation going on over there. And then we've got North Carolina taking on Oregon State, the 3-14 matchup. I think this might be a little bit of a tricky game if you look at it, but I'm going to go ahead and take North Carolina in that one. And then another interesting game here. We've got Vanderbilt taking on Oregon, the 7-10 matchup. I've liked what I've seen from both teams, honestly. I like Vanderbilt and Michaela Blakes and Oregon with Deja Kelly. But I think I'm gonna go with Vanderbilt. Of course, with Blakes and Camille Pierre and everything, and Pierre having a little bit of motivation for not making an all SEC team. And then we've got Duke taking on Lehigh in the 2-15 matchup. And I'm going to go ahead and take Duke for that one. All right, round of 32 in the region. We've got South Carolina and Indiana. Now, listen, remember last year, when South Carolina took on Indiana, that was in the Sweet 16, and South Carolina lost a 22-point lead. I mean, they won the game, but they still blew the lead. I don't think that's going to happen in this game. Give me South Carolina to win. And then we've got Alabama taking on Norfolk State, another interesting matchup here. But you know what? This is not bias talking. I said Norfolk State is dangerous, and I'm going to keep with that. Give me another upset special, Spartan style. Behold the green and gold, baby. All right, next we've got West Virginia taking on North Carolina. That's another tricky game, looking at it as far as that's concerned. But I'm going to go ahead and take North Carolina in the game. And then we've got Vanderbilt taking on Duke. Duke is clearly the better team here. Give me Duke. And then in the Sweet 16 for the region, we would have South Carolina taking on Norfolk State. And I think this is the game where the clock strikes midnight on my beautiful green and gold Cinderella Norfolk State. So go ahead and give me South Carolina in that one, and then North Carolina and Duke. Duke, like I said, is the better team, so I'm going to go ahead and take them. And then we would have South Carolina and Duke in the Elite Eight matchup, which I would think would be at least a good game. But I'm going to go ahead and take South Carolina, who advances to the Final Four in Region 2. All right, let's go to Region 4 with USC, the number one seed there, looking for their first Final Four appearance since 1986 and their first championship since those Cheryl Miller teams won it back in 83 and 84. They're taking on UNC Greensboro. I'm going to go ahead and take UNC in that one. And then next we've got the 8-9 matchup, Cal taking on Mississippi State. I like Cal. I'm going to go ahead and take them in this matchup here. And then we've got Kansas State taking on Fairfield. I'm going to go and pick Kansas State for that matchup there. And then we've got Liberty taking on Kentucky. Now, I think Liberty is a pretty dangerous team as far as the tournament is concerned, but I think Kentucky has enough to win that matchup, so I'm going to go ahead and take them. Then we've got Iowa taking on Murray State in the 6-11 matchup. I'm going to go ahead and take Iowa in that game. Then we've got Oklahoma and Florida Gulf Coast. Now this is a little bit of a tricky game because Florida Gulf Coast always has good teams. Like they are always a dangerous team as far as competition on these levels are concerned. Taking on Oklahoma, and I think I'm going to go with the upset special here. Give me Florida Gulf Coast to advance here. And then we've got Oklahoma State taking on South Dakota State. I kind of want to take the upset special in this one, but I think I'm going to go ahead and go with Oklahoma State in the matchup. And then we've got UConn taking on Arkansas State in the 2-15 matchup. I'm going to go ahead and take UConn there. All right, next we've got USC taking on Cal in the round of 32 for the region. I'm going to go ahead and take USC for that one, SoCal. And then we've got Kansas State and Kentucky in the 4 and the 5 matchup. That's a tricky game if you ask me, but I'm going to go ahead and pick Kentucky. Then we've got Iowa taking on Florida Gulf Coast. I'm going to go and pick Iowa for the matchup. And then we've got Oklahoma State taking on UConn. Give me UConn. And then in the Sweet 16, we've got USC taking on the 4-ranked Kentucky. I'm going to go ahead and pull with USC for that one. And then Iowa and UConn, the rematch of last year's Final Four in the Sweet 16 as far as the region is concerned. But I think I'm going to go ahead and pick Iowa. Not Iowa. I'm going to pick UConn for the game. What am I talking about? UConn getting the win over Iowa. They get their revenge on the Hawkeyes. And then this is where it gets interesting. USC taking on UConn. The rematch of last year's Elite Eight matchup in this year's Elite Eight matchup. And I believe that these two teams match up with each other extremely well. But I think UConn, if you look at it, is the more balanced team as far as the two are concerned. So I'm going to go ahead and pick UConn to advance to the Final Four out of Region 4. And then we've got Region 3 with Texas being the number one seed in that region, taking on the other 7-5-7 team with an incredible win last night, William and Mary, but I don't think this Cinderella story is going to last very long. Give me Texas in the game. And then in the next matchup, we've got Illinois and Creighton in the 8-9 matchup. I'm going to go and pick Illinois for that game. Then we've got Tennessee taking on South Florida. Now, this is tricky because Tennessee, I don't really have a whole lot of high stock in Tennessee, if we're being brutally honest. But I would think they would get the win here against South Florida. And then we've got Ohio State taking on Montana State. I'm gonna pick the Buckeyes to win. I kind of like this Buckeye team. Jelani Cambridge and the team there. Then we've got Michigan and Iowa State tipping off our action today. The 11:30 tip-off time today, and I kind of want to go with the upset special, but I really like Michigan. They always put out their best competition in big games. They've done it since the beginning of the season. So I think they get the win over an Iowa State team, which, if we're being honest, I do not think is all that great and all that cracked up to be. They haven't really been all season, if we're being brutally honest. And then we've got Notre Dame taking on Stephen F. Austin in the 3-14 matchup. I'm going to take Notre Dame there to win that. Then we've got Louisville taking on Nebraska, a disastrous tournament for Louisville last year, getting bounced by Middle Tennessee, the 12th ranked, I believe, middle ranked Tennessee, while Louisville was a 5 seed. Now, this is a game where Nebraska, I can realistically see an upset special happening with Louisville and Nebraska, but I don't think Louisville is going to lose in the first round back-to-back years. So I'm going to take Louisville. And then you've got TCU, who's been by far one of the best stories in women's college basketball, taking on Fairleigh Dickinson. I'm going to go ahead and pick TCU for that one. And then in the round of 32, we've got Texas taking on Illinois. I'm going to go ahead and pick Texas for that one. Then we've got Tennessee taking on Ohio State. That is a really hard game for me there. You know what? That is a hard game to pick. A very hard game to pick if we get that one. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go. You know what? Let's go with Tennessee. What the heck? Let's go with Tennessee for that one. And then we've got Michigan taking on Notre Dame, which is going to be a very interesting matchup there. I think these two teams match up with each other. I think the guard play anyway. I think the guards really match up well in this one. You've got the freshman guards with Michigan, and of course you've got Hannah Hidalgo and Miles as far as Notre Dame is concerned. But I think experience gets the win here, so I'm going to pick Notre Dame. And then we've got Louisville taking on TCU, and I really, really, really like this TCU team, so I'm going to go ahead and pick them. And, and then we've got the Texas-Tennessee game in the Sweet 16. If we get that, that's going to be a very interesting matchup there as far as that situation is concerned. But I think I like Texas to go and win that one. I really feel like that Texas-Tennessee matchup could really go either way. But I think I like Texas in the matchup. And then we've got Notre Dame taking on TCU. I'm gonna. That's a hard game there, if you ask me. But dang. I mean, TCU. I think TCU is the more. I mean, my God. I'm gonna go ahead and pick TCU to advance, and then we would have Texas and TCU in the Elite Eight matchup, and I think I'm going to go ahead and pick Texas in that one to advance to the Final Four. So our Final Four: UCLA taking on UConn, and then South Carolina taking on Texas for the 4th time. And then for the UCLA-UConn matchup, that's going to be a very interesting matchup should we get that in the Final Four. But I think UConn is the better team in that situation, so I'm going to go ahead and pick them. And then you've got South Carolina taking on Texas for the 4th time. And South Carolina, of course, like I said, they're going to be chippy in this matchup. They don't want to lose to Texas again, especially in a situation like this, if you ask me. So I'm going to go ahead and pick South Carolina to advance. And then we get the championship game rematch that we got from 3 years ago. UConn taking on South Carolina. Now, a little interesting note about South Carolina here. They don't lose to the same team twice in the same season. As a matter of fact, the last time that happened where they lost to a team twice in the same season was in 2019, and two teams did that actually. Mississippi State, who would go on to win the SEC that year, that Vic Schaefer coach team, I believe. And then the other time was Baylor, where they lost to Baylor in the regular season. And South Carolina lost to Baylor again in the Sweet 16, who would ultimately go on to win the championship that year. So, I mean, for every rhyme and every reason, you would think that South Carolina would be the favorite, and rightfully so, to win that matchup. But I think UConn kind of had South Carolina figured out. I mean, my goodness, they mopped the floor with them at Colonial Life. And like I said, I believe Gino Auriemma's due for a championship. He hasn't won it since Brianna Stewart left. So I think Gino is due for a championship. So I'm going to go ahead and pick UConn as my national champion. I picked them before the season, and as I've said throughout the college season, until they lose, they're going to be my pick. And that, my friends, is my bracket for the women's tournament. Well, that will do it for the women's basketball rundown. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And also follow me on Twitter and on Blue Sky at CW Talk Sports. That's CWTALKS Sports. And I will see you the next time. Enjoy the games, everyone. Peace.